What if I told you that the time you keep waking up for no reason is not random at all? That silence between 3 and 5 a.m. is not empty. It is loaded. While the world sleeps, something is either trying to wake you up or pull you ahead of everyone else. Silence is not empty. It is not nothing. It is a mirror that most people are too afraid to look into. During the day, life is loud enough to distract you from yourself. Notifications, conversations, responsibilities, entertainment, everything competes for your attention. You rarely get a moment where you are truly alone with your thoughts. But when you wake up between 3 and 5 a.m., the world loses its voice. And in that absence of noise, something powerful begins to speak the truth. In silence, your mind stops performing for others. There is no audience, no pressure to appear strong, successful, or unaffected. What remains is raw thinking. Thoughts you've been avoiding during the day start to surface. Feelings you buried under business begin to rise again. This is why silence can feel uncomfortable. It removes the filters you normally hide behind and forces you to face what is real inside you, not what you present to the outside world. Most people fear this moment without even realizing it. That is why they quickly reach for their phones, turn on a video, or create noise as soon as they wake up. They are not trying to be entertained. They are trying to escape, because silence has a way of asking questions that distraction cannot answer. Questions like, are you really happy? Are you moving in the right direction? Or are you just moving? These questions are not loud, but they are heavy. In the stillness of early morning. Your thoughts become sharper. You start noticing patterns in your thinking that you ignored during the day. You begin to realize how often you repeat the same worries, the same doubts, the same internal arguments. Silence does not create these thoughts. It only reveals that they were always there, waiting beneath the surface. And once you see them clearly, you cannot unsee them. This is also the space where honesty becomes unavoidable. During the day, you can lie to yourself easily. You can say, I'm fine, I'll start tomorrow, or I don't care. But in silence, those excuses lose their power. There is no noise to support them, no distractions to reinforce them. You are left alone with your real condition, your real goals, and your real distance between where you are and where you want to be. It can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is often the beginning of awareness. And yet, this is also where transformation quietly begins. Because once silence reveals what noise hides, you gain something extremely rare: clarity. Not the kind of clarity that comes from advice or motivation, but kind that comes from self-confrontation. You start to see your life without distortion. You understand what matters, what doesn't, what you've been avoiding, and what you truly need to change. Silence doesn't just expose you, it refines you. If you are willing to stay with it long enough to listen. There is a different version of your mind that only appears when everything else goes quiet. During the day, your thoughts are constantly shaped by external influence. People's opinions, social expectations, tasks, pressure, and constant stimulation. But between 3 and 5 a.m., those influences fade. What remains is not the version of your mind that you present to the world, but the version that exists underneath everything else. It is quieter, more exposed, and far more honest than you realize. At night, especially in those early hours, your brain stops trying to perform. You are no longer thinking in terms of how things look, sound, or appear to others. Instead, your thoughts become direct and unfiltered. Problems you avoided suddenly reappear. Decisions you postponed come back into focus. Emotions you buried during the day begin to surface without permission. It is as if your mind finally stops negotiating with distraction and starts speaking the truth directly to you. This is why many people feel an unusual emotional intensity when they wake up at this time. It is not the hour itself that changes them. It is the removal of everything that usually numbs them. Without constant stimulation, your mind becomes more sensitive to reality. You start thinking about your life, your direction, your choices, and your regrets with unusual clarity. And because there is no noise to dilute those thoughts, they feel stronger and more immediate. In this state, self-deception becomes harder to maintain. During the day, it is easy to convince yourself that you are progressing even when you are standing still. It is easy to stay busy and call it productivity. But at night, those illusions begin to fade. You start recognizing the difference between motion and progress, between distraction and purpose. Your mind stops accepting excuses so easily because there is nothing around you to reinforce them. Only truth remains, and truth is not always comfortable. This honesty can feel overwhelming, especially for those who are not used to it. That is why many people try to escape it as quickly as possible, by going back to sleep, scrolling endlessly, or filling the silence with noise. But the discomfort is not the problem. The discomfort is the signal. It is your mind's way of showing you that something in your life is not aligned, not resolved, or not fully understood yet. Ignoring it doesn't remove it. It only delays the moment you will have to face it again. And yet, this is also where a rare kind of mental strength begins to form. Because when you learn to stay with your thoughts instead of escaping them, you start building self-awareness that most people never develop. You begin to understand yourself without filters. You recognize your fears without denial. You see your patterns without justification. And in that quiet, honest space, your mind slowly shifts from confusion toward clarity, not because the world changed, but because you finally stopped avoiding what it was already trying to tell you. Discipline does not begin in public. It does not begin when people are cheering, observing, or expecting something from you. Real discipline is born in complete privacy. When there is no audience, no applause, and no pressure to prove anything to anyone else. That is why the early hours between 3 and 5 a.m. are so revealing. In that window, there is only one witness to your actions, you. And that is where your true character starts to take shape. Most people misunderstand discipline as motivation. They wait to feel ready or to feel inspired before they act. But inspiration is inconsistent. It comes and goes like weather. Discipline, on the other hand, is built when you choose to act even when nothing inside you is pushing you forward, especially when nobody would ever know whether you acted or not. The early morning becomes a quiet testing ground for this truth. What you do when no one is watching often matters more than anything you do when everyone is. In those moments, excuses become easier to hear, but also easier to defeat. There is no boss calling, no friend checking, no obligation demanding attention. It is just you and your choices. You can either return to sleep, choosing comfort and delay, or you can stay awake and take control of the moment. This is where discipline quietly begins, not in dramatic effort, but in small decisions that no one else will ever see. Over time, these unseen decisions start to shape your identity. Every time you choose focus over distraction, effort over laziness, and intention over avoidance, you are building internal structure. Discipline is not a single action. It is a pattern. And patterns formed in private become the foundation of how you behave in public. What you repeatedly do alone becomes who you are when the world is watching. This is also why many people struggle to change their lives despite having goals. They try to transform their habits in front of others, but they ignore the private moments where real change is built. If your actions collapse when no one is around, they will not hold strong when pressure increases. The early morning hours expose this truth clearly. There is no performance, only behavior. And behavior repeated in silence eventually becomes identity. In that stillness, discipline becomes less about force and more about integrity. It is no longer about pushing yourself through motivation, but about aligning your actions with the person you claim to be. If you say you want growth, that hour tests it. If you say you want change, that hour measures it. And if you consistently choose effort in those unseen moments, you are no longer hoping for discipline. You are becoming it. There is a common belief that ideas are born in the middle of action, noise, and constant activity. But in reality, chaos rarely creates clarity. Chaos only scatters attention. When your mind is overloaded with information, tasks, and distractions, it becomes difficult to hear anything meaningful beneath the surface. True ideas, clear, original, and powerful ones, rarely survive in that environment. They need space. They need stillness. And that is exactly what the early hours between 3 and 5 a.m. quietly provide. In the silence of those hours, your mind is no longer reacting to the outside world. It is no longer responding to messages, expectations, or immediate demands. Instead, it begins to reorganize itself. Thoughts that were previously fragmented start connecting. Concepts that felt unrelated begin to form patterns. This is not random. It is the natural process of a mind finally given enough room to think without interruption. Stillness does not force ideas. It allows them to emerge. During the day, most thinking is reactive. You respond to what is in front of you, problems, conversations, tasks, and noise. But in stillness, thinking becomes reflective. Instead of reacting outwardly, your mind turns inward. It starts questioning assumptions, revisiting experiences, and exploring possibilities that were previously ignored. This shift from reaction to reflection is where creativity quietly begins to grow. Many people mistake inspiration for something external, as if it arrives like a sudden spark from nowhere. But more often, inspiration is the result of accumulated silence. It is the moment when your mind, after being overwhelmed for too long, finally finds enough quiet to connect what it already knows in a new way. The ideas were not missing before. They were simply buried under noise. Stillness does not create new thoughts. It uncovers the ones that were hidden. This is why some of the most meaningful insights often come at unexpected times, especially when you are not actively trying to force them. When the pressure to produce disappears, your mind becomes more open. It begins to explore without judgment. It starts to wander in directions that structured thinking during the day would never allow. And in that wandering, new perspectives are formed, ideas that feel clearer, deeper, and more aligned with your true thinking. But stillness also requires patience. It is not immediate. If you approach it with expectation, it can feel empty or unproductive. However, if you stay with it long enough, something shifts. Your thoughts begin to slow down, then settle, and then align. What once felt like confusion starts turning into clarity. And in that quiet space, ideas no longer feel forced. They feel discovered. There are moments when waking up in the middle of the night is not random at all. It feels sudden, almost deliberate, as if something inside you decided it was time to open your eyes. Between 3 and 5 a.m., your body often operates in a deeply sensitive state. Hormones, stress levels, mental load, and even emotional tension can influence your sleep cycle. So when you find yourself awake in that quiet window, it may not just be coincidence. It may be a signal that something within you is trying to be noticed. Your body communicates in ways your conscious mind often ignores. During the day, you are too busy to listen carefully. You override fatigue with caffeine, silence discomfort with distraction, and ignore emotional strain by staying occupied. But at night, especially in those early hours, your body gets a chance to speak without interruption. It is not shouting, it is signaling. And signals are subtle: a restless mind, a sudden awakening, or a feeling of alertness when you should be asleep. Sometimes this wakefulness is tied to stress that has not been processed. Even if you think you are managing life well, your body remembers everything your mind tries to forget. Unresolved tension, emotional pressure, overthinking, or constant mental activity can accumulate quietly. When the world is silent, your nervous system has no more distractions to hide behind. That is when your body may bring you into awareness, not to disturb you, but to inform you that something needs attention. There is also a biological rhythm involved. Your body follows natural cycles of rest and alertness, and between 3 and 5 a.m., many people experience a lighter phase of sleep. In this state, it becomes easier to wake up, but what matters is not just that you wake up, it is how you interpret it. One person sees it as inconvenience and returns to sleep. Another recognizes it as a moment of awareness and begins to reflect. The difference is not the body, it is the awareness of the mind. In some cases, waking up at this time can also reflect internal change. When your life is going through emotional or psychological shifts, your sleep patterns often adjust with it. The mind processes change even when you are not conscious of it. Decisions you have not fully made, directions you are uncertain about, or transitions you are resisting can all manifest as restlessness during the night. The body reacts before the mind fully understands why. And yet, this moment is not meant to be feared. It is meant to be understood. Your body is not working against you. It is trying to bring balance back, whether it is signaling stress, awareness, or internal change. It is asking for attention rather than avoidance. In that quiet early hour, your body is not simply waking you up from sleep, it is waking you up to yourself. There are hours in life that feel ordinary, and then there are hours that quietly decide direction. Between 3 and 5 a.m. is often not just a time, it becomes a threshold, a space where the world is still asleep, but your thoughts are unusually awake. In that stillness, something subtle happens. You are no longer reacting to life. You are observing it. And observation is where change begins. A turning point does not announce itself loudly. It rarely comes with clarity at first. In fact, it often feels confusing, even uncomfortable. You wake up, and instead of rest, you find thoughts waiting. Questions about your direction, your habits, your choices, your future. It can feel like disruption, but in reality, it is exposure. Life is showing you what you have been too busy to notice during the day. In this hour, you are placed in a rare position. Without distraction, without noise, and without escape, you cannot outrun your thoughts easily at this time. That is why it becomes powerful, because when escape is removed, awareness increases. And when awareness increases, the possibility of change becomes real. You start seeing the gap between who you are and who you say you want to become. Many people go through this moment without recognizing its value. They treat it as an inconvenience, something to fix by going back to sleep. But what they miss is that these early awakenings often occur during phases of internal transition. Something in your life is shifting, mentally, emotionally, or directionally, and your mind is trying to process it before you are fully aware of it in the daytime. This is also where decisions begin to form quietly, not dramatic life decisions, but internal ones. Decisions about discipline, about focus, about letting go of habits, about becoming more intentional. In this hour, you are not influenced by the noise of the world. You are influenced only by your own awareness. And that makes every thought more significant, every realization more personal, and every insight more direct. Over time, if you pay attention instead of avoiding it, this hour starts shaping your identity. It becomes a space where you confront yourself honestly, where you notice patterns you ignored, and where you begin to realign your thinking. What once felt like random wakefulness slowly transforms into a consistent moment of reflection. And in that reflection, something begins to shift, not outside of you, but within you. And maybe that is the real message hidden inside those early hours. It is not about fear, and it is not about mystery. It is about attention, because most people are not lacking opportunity. They are lacking awareness. And awareness rarely arrives in noise. It arrives in stillness. It arrives when everything else stops competing for your focus, and you are finally left alone with your own mind. If you keep waking up between 3 and 5 a.m., you don't have to force it into meaning, but you also shouldn't ignore it as nothing. That moment is simply life offering you a rare kind of space to think clearly, space to notice honestly, and space to understand what you usually rush past during the day. What you choose to do with that space is where your life quietly begins to shift. Because in the end, transformation does not always start with big decisions. Sometimes it starts with a quiet moment when everything else is asleep and you are finally awake enough to notice yourself.